Hello, and welcome to Healthy California podcast. My name is Linda Brown, and I am the host of Healthy California, where my goal is to help educate you on your daily choices so we all can become healthy. I believe you, your family, your neighbor, and your community are all looking for better ways and simple ways to return to being healthy. Many of you have health issues or have family that's going through tough times that seemingly have no answers. It's frustrating. There are questions about health, environment, foods, exercise, and lifestyle, and it can be all overwhelming. And who do you believe? And where's the science behind it? This podcast will unravel the mystery behind being unhealthy and talk about little things that we can do in our lives to make a positive change in our health from all angles. So to be healthy, we need to have physical health, mental health, environmental health, financial and social health, and of course, spiritual health. Let's answer some of these questions to get healthy. What good is just listening to a podcast? I will give you resources as well, ways to take steps and make positive changes in your life to becoming healthy. This is a journey, not an assignment, so be kind to yourself. Okay, California, welcome back to Healthy California. Today, I decided to talk about diabetes and why diabetes. Well, diabetes is a global epidemic, and it continues to grow. So in 2021, the International Diabetes Foundation, they recorded that 1 out of 10 people have diabetes. This is globally. 1 out of 10, 10% of the population. That's huge. And by 2030, that number is expected to grow 20%. And by 2045, it's supposed to grow another 20% on top of that. So it's a big deal. It's a problem. In the U.S., according to the CDC, 1 out of 5 people don't even know they have diabetes. 1 out of 5 people that have diabetes don't even know it. And 1 out of 3 people are pre-diabetic. And 80% of those people don't even know it. So 80% of people that are pre-diabetic don't even know it. That's a lot of people. So 1 out of 3 people, that means 3 people listening to this podcast, 1 of you has prediabetes. That's astounding and it's shocking. And the reason why it's shocking is because it's a reversible disease. Another problem is that people that have diabetes have twice as much medical costs as those who don't. So their medical care is 2 times higher for people with diabetes. And that's because on top of diabetes, they have other health risks, other complications like chronic kidney disease, cardiovascular disease, stroke, amputations, all the things that come along with diabetes that we'll go over later. So it's a big problem. And it's a growing problem. And in this world of, healthcare and, we're the best country in the world with our healthcare system, yet the problem seems to be growing and more people are becoming medicated and not necessarily becoming healthier. So it's a problem. So what is the definition of diabetes? A study in 2022 defined it as, and it's a study that was done, but it's pretty straight across the board. Now we're talking about type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is largely a reversible chronic medical condition in which the body becomes resistant to the effects of insulin or doesn't produce enough insulin to maintain normal blood glucose levels. So that's what diabetes is. We don't make enough insulin to maintain normal blood glucose levels. Well, what's normal blood glucose levels? Well, we can't maintain it because we constantly have high blood glucose and we can't seem to catch up with it. And the part that I want to emphasize is it's a reversible disease. Type 2 diabetes is a reversible disease. It is absolutely reversible. So what are the symptoms? So the symptoms of type 2 diabetes, and these are symptoms that you might see if you are a little bit more progressed from pre-diabetes going to diabetes. So excessive urination, excessive thirst, excessive hunger or appetite, weight gain, fatigue, blurred vision, poor wound healing, and frequent infections, periodontal disease. Of that, how much of those symptoms do you have right now? Excessive urination, thirst, hunger and appetite excessive, weight gain that might be seemingly unexplained, fatigue, blurred vision. And how do you diagnose diabetes? Well, if you have a fasting glucose level greater than 125 on 2 separate occasions. Fasting glucose means that you haven't eaten for 12 hours and you still have a glucose of 125. So on a normal basis, you want your glucose levels to be around 100. So fasting should be less than 100. But if you haven't eaten for 12 hours, then there should be no reason your fasting glucose should be greater than 125. That's a problem. Another way they diagnose it is a random blood glucose level greater than 200 plus one of the symptoms above that I mentioned. So just a random blood glucose levels. Your blood glucose should never really be above 200 on a healthy, regular basis. So if it's randomly high and you have one of those symptoms above that I mentioned, then that's another way that they diagnose type 2 diabetes. And also if your A1C needs to be less than 5.7. Your A1C kind of determines where your average of your blood glucose in the last 3 months. So that's how they diagnose it. And if you have those fasting blood glucose levels, then you need to listen up, but you need to make changes. How does type 2 diabetes work? You eat, your body turns that food into a usable form of energy that is glucose. If you eat carbohydrates, it turns it into glucose. So just think of glucose as blood sugar. It's sugar. Your body needs it for energy. So you eat sugar, you eat carbs, it turns it into glucose, it sends it through the blood, and then when you have glucose in your blood, the pancreas then secretes insulin, which is a hormone. It secretes insulin that helps the glucose into your cells. So the insulin doesn't go into the cell, but the insulin attaches to a receptor, and then that receptor will open up channels so that the blood glucose can go into your cell. So if all these cells are taking up blood glucose, then your blood sugar should normalize, and you shouldn't have glucose in your blood because your cells have taken it all up. So that's how normal blood glucose works. You eat, you have glucose in your blood, insulin is released, and then the cells take up that blood glucose. What happens with type 2 diabetes? Same thing, eat, you have the blood glucose levels that trigger the insulin to be released, and then the cells take up glucose into the cell for use. But type 2 diabetes, the blood sugar doesn't normalize because you always have blood sugar. It doesn't decrease because you're constantly having glucose in the blood. So for whatever reason, right? And when we say that, we think of because of diet, but not always. The glucose is always in the blood because you either don't have enough insulin to take the glucose into the cell, or the insulin can't keep up. So then the receptors on the cells, they get tired or they become resistant to the insulin. And when that happens, the insulin then increases in your blood and the blood sugar increases in your blood. So when the blood sugar increases because the insulin has become resistant, then the pancreas makes more insulin. So then you even have growing insulin and you have growing blood sugar. Insulin growing in the blood in your body can be destructive for many reasons. So then you have increased insulin and increased blood sugar, and that leads to disease. So that's how type 2 diabetes works. I want to take a second to share a helpful resource with you. I have a free health questionnaire designed to pinpoint the areas in your life that you need to focus on for optimal wellness. If you're interested, simply click the link in the show notes or visit heal-throughfood.com to access it. Now let's dive back into the show. You have too much blood sugar and the insulin can't take it into the cell. It doesn't have enough of it, or the cells get tired of it, becomes resistant to the insulin. That's what insulin resistant means. The cells are unable to take the insulin on the cell so that it can help the glucose into the cell. And we need glucose in our cells because that's what we use for energy. It's one of the things we use for energy. What happens with the blood glucose that doesn't make it into the cell? Well, then we store it. We store it in our fat tissue, and we store it as adipose tissue, which is fat. So we store that sugar into our adipose tissue as fat. So we end up gaining weight. Why does this happen? So there's a couple reasons why type 2 diabetes happens. And one of them I kind of just alluded to, I explained. But you could also have a pancreatic tumor, a tumor that will keep pumping out insulin. The cells can become insulin resistant. So you could have a pancreatic tumor. That's very rare, but it can happen. And then the other one is chronically high blood glucose levels, leading to insulin resistance. And that's the more common type. You could be on chronic use of cortisone medications. We take cortisone a lot of times for inflammation, but cortisone can increase our blood sugar, which will increase our insulin and then make us insulin resistant. So chronic use of cortisone. And inactivity. So not being active actually can lead you to diabetes, insulin resistance. What else? Increased adipose, like I said earlier, is if you have high insulin. So like I said earlier, if you have high blood sugar, high blood glucose, you're going to store it in your tissue as fat, as adipose tissue. But if you have increased adipose, it's going to dampen the effects of insulin. It's going to impair the use in the muscle. If you have increased blood sugar, it's going to increase the fat, which dampens the insulin, and it's this vicious cycle. So a lot of times people that have insulin resistance have a hard time losing weight because it's this vicious cycle. But it's not impossible, and once you kind of break that barrier, it's easier. What's another thing that can cause diabetes? Well, inflammation. I talked about inflammation a couple weeks ago. It all comes full circle, right? Inflammation is a big deal. Inflammation can lead to diabetes, and then diabetes can lead to inflammation. Well, what causes inflammation? I talked about it a couple weeks ago, but we'll kind of go over it again. So stress releases cortisol. When you have increased cortisol is our stress hormone, it releases these inflammatory markers. Any type of stress, physical stress, mental stress, can get us inflamed. Lifestyle factors can cause inflammation, like smoking, drinking, breathing in toxic air from pollution or fire. California has this fire season. So lifestyle factors could also include stress. Stress could be a lifestyle factor. Poor diet, of course. Poor diet increases inflammation and gained weight, which can lead to inflammation. And then inflammation can lead to gain weight. It's a vicious cycle. Genetic factors can lead to inflammation. Toxins in the air, what we put on our body, what we breathe in, what we drink. Toxins definitely are inflammatory markers, but they're also endocrine disruptors, which endocrine is a hormone, so toxins are also hormone disruptors, and insulin is a hormone. Infections can lead to inflammation, and poor sleep can lead to inflammation, which can lead to diabetes. Of those things, let me go back to things that can go wrong, like pancreatic tumor, that's very rare, high blood glucose, chronic cortisone, inactivity, increased fat on your body, and then inflammation. And then what of those can you change? Well, and then when I say inflammation, what causes inflammation? Stress, lifestyle factors, poor diet, genetic factors, toxins, infections, and poor sleep. And what of those can you change? There's some of that you can change. You can change your stress. You can change your lifestyle factors. You can change your diet. You can change your activity levels. You can change your sleep. All that can help you with diabetes. And if changing your diet is hard, then work at it slowly and change something else. Change the stress, change the sleep. There's other things that you can work on as well. So what are risk factors? So I said the things that could lead to diabetes, but there's also risk factors you can control and can't control. So what are some risk factors? Family history. Some people believe that if your parents were diabetic, then you will also be diabetic, and that is absolutely not true. If you have both parents that have diabetes, is that genetic or is that a lifestyle factor? And it could be both. But if you have a genetic predisposition, you can choose to make a lifestyle choice that will keep that gene turned off. Both my parents were diabetic. At my age right now, my mom had been diabetic for about 20 years, and I think my dad was just becoming diabetic. At my age, they were already diabetic, and I am not. I choose to make lifestyle choices that will keep that gene turned off, and you can too. What are other risk factors? Obesity, which we already talked about, obesity. Increased hip to weight ratio. So if you have a waist that's bigger than your hips, that is a risk factor. Age could be a risk factor. And that is just because time on the earth, things eventually go through wear and tear. So age can be a risk factor, race and ethnicity. People that have a background of African American, Hispanic American, Native American, Asian American, Pacific Islander, they are at increased risk. However, how much of that is genetic and how much of that is lifestyle? There was this big study on Pima Indians down south, and the Pima Indians were very, very healthy. And right now, in today's day, the Pima Indians are one of the largest population of obesity and diabetes probably in the world. How did that happen? How did they go from being very healthy to completely being an obese population? So is that genetic or is that lifestyle? I would say that's lifestyle, because something happened in a couple generations where they went to become largely a diabetic population. So I want you to think about that for a second. If you think that it's in your genes, it could be, but maybe there's lifestyle choices that have changed over time on what the population sees as normal, and it's actually dangerous. So what is another risk factor? History of being diabetic. So when I say history, I'm talking about maybe you had a reading that was high temporarily, or maybe you had gestational diabetes. If you had a history of being diabetic while you were pregnant, that is also a risk factor for becoming diabetic in the future. What else? Hypertension. Hypertension is a risk factor. Hypertension can lead to diabetes. Diabetes can lead to hypertension. Triglycerides greater than 250. Vitamin D, omega-3, antioxidant deficiency. I am a big believer that you have to have your vitamins and minerals. Your body absolutely needs it. And when you become deficient in vitamins and minerals, then you are going down a road to disease. So vitamin D, omega-3, antioxidant deficiency are all risk factors. You don't want to be deficient in your vitamins and minerals. History of PCOS, that is polycystic ovarian syndrome. The polycystic ovarian syndrome is largely a endocrine disease. So if you have endocrine disruptors or hormones in general that are being disrupted, then that could lead to diabetes. And then another risk factor, inactivity. So the CDC says if you are not active more than 3 times a week, then you are at risk for type 2 diabetes. And then finally, another risk factor is the SAD diet. Standard American diet, the SAD diet, an inflammatory diet, high in refined carbs, low fiber. That's all a risk factor for type 2 diabetes. What if you have diabetes or you have some of those risk factors? What happens when you have diabetes and you don't know it, or you know it and you don't do anything about it? Then here are some complications. I feel like this is a doom and gloom podcast, so I apologize for it being so doom and gloom, but this is so important, and I want to emphasize that this is a reversible disease. So the reason why it sounds so doom and gloom is because they don't know how to make the change. I should just leave it at that. People don't know how to change or why it's important to change, and that's why it seems so doom and gloom. But I want to empower you that you can do something about it. What are the complications of diabetes? Hypoglycemia. Hypoglycemia means low blood sugar, and you would normally see that in the type 1 diabetes. If you don't know you have diabetes, this would be a complication because all of a sudden your blood sugar goes way down to a dangerous level. Hyperglycemia. Let me go back to the hypoglycemia, a complication of diabetes. And of course, I say you usually see that in type 1 diabetes. But what if you have diabetes that is being managed by insulin, and you took too much insulin, and then all of a sudden you are so hypoglycemic that you pass out and you're in a very dangerous level of very low? That's a complication, right? And I say that because that's what happened with my mother. She took too much insulin only because she couldn't see her insulin needle when she was giving herself insulin. So her doctor gave her all these needles. She had glaucoma. She couldn't see. So she was literally giving herself a shot in the dark. She didn't know. And then my sister found her passed out on her recliner, and she ended up in the hospital for a week or two. That is a complication. Hyperglycemia, too high of blood sugar, is a complication. Cardiovascular disease If you have diabetes, you can get cardiovascular disease, hypertension, retinopathy, so it can affect your eyes. Neuropathy affects your nerves. Neuropathy can lead to amputations because if you can't feel your feet and you step on something, or you stub your toe or ingrown toenail or whatever, and you can't feel it, then that can get infected. And you can't feel the infection, your body doesn't have the circulation to heal it, and then you get necrosis or gangrene, and then you have to go to get that amputated. Amputations are a complication of diabetes. Periodontal disease, if you have an unhealthy mouth, teeth, that is absolutely a complication of diabetes because you can't fight off disease. If you have diabetes, you can't fight off disease. I want you to think about this for a second. If you have a periodontal disease, a disease in your mouth, then what is going on in the rest of your body? Because the mouth is how the main things get into your body. And if your mouth is not healthy, what is going on in the rest of your body? Disease. What other things come from having diabetes? Pain, because your body's in an inflamed state, so that can lead to pain. Depression, cognitive difficulties. And so let me explain cognitive difficulties for a second. If you have retinopathy is your vision has a problem, like your vision starts to go. Or if you have neuropathy, like your nerves aren't working properly. If you're having problems with your vision and your nerves, then why would one think that there's nothing going on in the brain with all those small little blood vessels going into your brain? And the brain is the main nervous system for your body. So if you're having problems in your eyes and in your limbs as far as neuropathy or circulation, then you absolutely are going to have problems in your brain. Absolutely. You might not see it yet, but you might start seeing it in things like brain fog, forgetfulness, and that's just the beginning signs of something going down the road. So I want you to think about that. What are other complications of diabetes? Autoimmune disorders. Autoimmune disorders is inflammation. Body starts attacking itself. But again, your body's in an inflamed state. So autoimmune disorders can be a result of diabetes. Poor wound healing and infection, unable to heal, unable to get over sicknesses easily. And then a complication of diabetes is just being nutrient deficient. Your nutrients, your vitamins, your minerals. And when you are diabetic for reasons of not eating healthy, then you're going to be going down a road of other things, other disease processes that come along with just not having enough nutrients in your body. So those are complications from having diabetes if you already have diabetes or suspect you do, but are not wanting to do something about it or not able to or don't know how to do anything about it. Okay, so now what? What do you do if you have diabetes? What are some of the things we can do? You can exercise, you could eat healthy, you can clean up your surroundings, you could reduce stress, and then you can take vitamins, minerals, supplements, botanicals, whatever you need to. But let's go down that list one at a time. So what can you do? Exercise, diet, clean up your surroundings, reduce stress, vitamins and mineral supplements. So let's talk about exercise. Exercise is important. Exercise, so both aerobic exercise and resistance training lowers your A1C. The more muscle you have on your body, the more your body will be able to take glucose in. And the more muscle you have on your body, muscle is an organ, and the more muscle you have on your body, the more you'll be able to take in blood glucose. Having more muscle in your body is going to decrease your A1C. So aerobic exercise to burn off the glucose that's in your blood and also to bring in the glucose that's in the blood. Yoga can reduce your A1C and your fasting blood glucose. Yoga is both active and stress relieving, although I have a friend who does a yoga class that's very extreme and it's a fast pace. So I guess it depends on what yoga class you have. And I just say yoga, but there's Tai Chi, there's other sorts of movement and exercises that you can do that both are stress reducing and keeping you moving. And there's even yoga classes that are chair yoga. If you can't stand and do some of those poses, all good yoga instructors would be able to modify a position for you so that you can do yoga in a way that is safe and easy for you to do. Let's see, what else about exercise? So patients are encouraged to exercise 30 to 60 minutes of moderate exercise intensity most days of the week. 30 to 60 minutes of moderate intensity. So what is moderate intensity? So you can go for a walk, and walking is good. Walking is obviously very, very good. But moderate means you need to get your heart rate up a little bit. You need to get a little bit of a glow on your skin. So, and you don't have to be moderate the whole entire time. I like to tell people that interval training is actually really good. So let's say you go out for a 30-minute walk. Maybe every other minute increase that pace a little bit. When you're talking about moderate intensity, we're talking about if you are walking with someone and you're having a nice conversation, that's great, you're moving. That's not a moderate intensity. A moderate intensity is you're walking with someone and you do that interval where you're walking fast for a minute. Your breath is where you can only say maybe 4 words before you have to take another breath. If you can say a full-on sentence, that's not moderate. If you have to breathe after about 4 words, that's more moderate. So you're getting your heart rate up to where you have to breathe a little bit faster. And you don't have to do that for the full 30 to 60 minutes. You can do that in intervals, like every other minute, every 3 minutes, every 5 minutes, whatever is going to work for you at that time. And what else can you do for exercise? Why is it important to exercise? It improves insulin sensitivity, and the more muscle you have, the more glucose you can use and store. The more muscle you have, the more your inflammation goes down. I think I talked about this last week. The more you exercise, the more you can control your adipose, your fat on your body. So you need exercise to just maintain that. And then if you have maintained adipose tissue, your inflammation goes down, your blood sugar is better. If you don't know how to get started, or it's painful to get started, or it's scary, then seek out a physical therapist or a trainer or an accountability partner. Get your family involved. Actually, that's very important. I'm talking about doom and gloom, but I do have someone coming on, I think next week or the week after, talking about family and how to keep kids motivated and healthy. So get your family involved. Be the leader of your family, be the hero of your family, make the change. If you aren't healthy, likeliness is that your family is following your lead and they're not going to be making good choices as well. So exercise is an important one. What's the other thing? I talked about exercise. Let's talk about a healthy diet. You can eat a rainbow assortment of fruits and vegetables. That means the more colorful your fruits and vegetables are, the more they're going to have all the nutrients in it that you need to stay healthy. So eat the rainbow. Eat all sorts of different colors. Reduce exposure to contaminated foods that are contaminated with pesticides, metals, food additives. Eat to support blood sugar. So when you put something in your mouth, think, is this going to help my blood sugar? One of the best things to think about when you're eating is there a source of fiber in this? When you have fiber in your meal, it's going to be a better choice because you need fiber for your gut microbiome. You can eat proteins that are going to increase your satiety, which means it's going to fill you up sooner. Plus, you need more protein. Chances are you need more protein. What else? You can eat healthy fats like avocados, nuts, olive oil, and then cut out the seed oils. So no safflower, sunflower, soy, no corn oil, canola, or cottonseed oil. Cut those out of your diet. Everything has safflower or sunflower or soy. If you look at packaging on a food, it's going to say it has one of those oils. So you have to look at the packaging as well. If you're going to clean up your diet, absolutely get those oils out. Think about avocado oil and olive oil as a good, healthy source of fat. What else? Take measures to reduce foodborne illnesses. So if you are traveling, be careful what you eat. If you're one of those people who are like, well, I'm just going to eat anything because I want to increase my immunity. Well, and that's fine. What if you pick up a parasite or a bacteria and then your gut microbiome is just destroyed? So just be careful about that. Or if you get something that you have to take an antibiotic, then your gut microbiome is just destroyed. So be careful about foodborne illnesses. Drink sufficient amounts of water. Water, always a sufficient amount of water. It's going to keep each living cell in your body working efficiently. But it's also going to decrease your hunger. A lot of times people think that they're hungry when they're really just thirsty. So if you are hungry, maybe drink a glass of water first. Wait 5 minutes and then see what happens with that hunger. What else? Eliminate refined carbs and alcohol. Refined carbs are the white breads, the pastas, the crackers, the cookies, anything that's made pretty much out of a flour are a refined carb. And you can get other flours that are more protein based. They have the lentil flour, so that is a better alternative. But a lot of times if things are ground down into a flour, even just lentil, lentil's a good source of protein, but a lot of times they'll still spike your blood sugar. So just be careful with the flours. If you were to have to choose a pasta, because you love pasta, maybe like a lentil pasta would be better. But just think about what it's still doing. It's still going to spike your blood sugar. And then just think about the SAD diet. Standard American diet is not a good diet. That is what you can do with your diet. So we talked about exercise, talked about diet. And so let's talk about cleaning up our surroundings. When I talk about our surroundings, I'm talking about things around you that enter into your body, which could be food, which could be air, which could be water, and which could be things that you are putting on your skin. So that's what I mean by clean up your surroundings. And if you are exposed to like a polluted air, like for work, or you are in a house where people smoke and you're exposed to secondhand smoke, or you live in an area that's dusty, you live near a field that is agricultural and you have dust coming in, then you might want to think about getting air filters. You might want to think about wearing a mask during the fire season. You might want to think about stopping smoking, even an e-cigarette. Anything that's not supposed to be in your lungs are all going to set off that inflammatory marker. Clean up the air. Other thing is water. Clean up your water. Drinking out of a plastic water bottle every day, that the plastic is leaching into that water. You don't want plastic in your body. Food, we just talked about food. I'm not going to go over that again, besides buy organic if you can. And then the things you put on your skin. So your skin is a huge organ. People put things on their skin to smell better, to put lotion to keep their skin soft, to protect themselves from the sun. But what's in those products? And it might just be a little bit here and there, but if you're constantly reapplying, that's a large amount of toxins entering your body. So what are the things to look for in toxins? So there's a lot of big words. There's polychlorinated bisphenols, so PCBs, DDTs, chloroform. I'm not going to make you memorize that. I just kind of want to make you think about what is going into your body. Soils, typically agricultural soil is going to have like a pesticide, herbicide, insecticide. That's the reason why I want you to eat organic, because you're not putting any of that stuff into your body. Those chemicals are hormone disruptors. So insulin is a hormone, right? So they're going to disrupt your hormones, not just one hormone, all your hormones. Being clean of all that is going to help. And then things like phthalates. Phthalates is a plastic, but you'll find phthalates in plastic toys, plastic wraps around your food containers, and then cosmetics, personal care items. Cosmetics will have phthalates, nail polishes, insecticides, moisturizers, shampoos. And it's kind of funny that I say insecticides and plastics in the same sentence as cosmetics and lotions. So you're putting plastics on your skin, and those are all cancer-causing and endocrine disruptors. So clean that up if you can. And if you don't know personal care items that have phthalates or are endocrine disruptors, then go to ewg.org, and they also have an app where you can literally go shopping down the store, look up an item and see if it's approved by the ewg.org. So EWG stands for Environmental Working Group. They are the company that puts out the Clean 15, the Dirty Dozen foods to eat, but they also have an app where you can look up daily products that may have chemicals in it. So, and not just personal care items, but things like cleaning supplies as well. So cleaning supplies, you need to be careful about your cleaning supplies. Things that smell good, like laundry sheets, candles, things that smell good likely are chemical. One of my favorite scents for a lotion is I think it's like Japanese pear blossom. I love that scent. But is there really Japanese pear blossoms in that lotion? No, there is absolutely no Japanese pear blossom in that lotion. So that's all created from chemicals, unfortunately. So I don't use that. Just things to think about, things that you can clean up. What else can we do? So I talked about exercise, diet, clean up your surroundings, and then reduce stress. So reduce stress is something that is important. So stress can cause inflammation. There is a mind-body connection. Some people don't think, how is me being stressed going to cause my body to be inflamed? There is absolutely a mind-body connection. And I talked about this a few weeks ago. When you're in stress, your body thinks it's in fight and flight mode. You're constantly running from that tiger. And then your body when it's stressed or running from a tiger, it's going to downregulate all the things it doesn't need. It doesn't need to reproduce. It doesn't need to go to the bathroom. So your digestive system goes down, your reproductive system goes down, your heart rate goes up, all the things that would happen to your body if you were to run into a tiger. So stress reduction is really important for prevention of disease and diabetes. So what can you do? You can meditate. You can do your breathing exercises that I taught you last week. You can sleep. If you remember, sleep is the time when you heal and when you recover. So you need to sleep. So according to the National Sleep Foundation, good sleep hygiene would be spend time in the bright natural light every day. Spend some time being exposed to the sun, exercise 30 minutes, 5 days a week, which we talked about that. So even this National Sleep Foundation thinks it's important. Eat meals consistently throughout the day. So the same time every day. Avoid heavy meals, avoid caffeine, avoid alcohol, develop a consistent routine. So go to sleep the same time every day. We spend more time getting ready for work, 8 hours, than we do getting ready for bed, 8 hours. So you need to be consistent about your routine. Put away devices an hour before you sleep. Devices like TVs, phones, computers, all that light coming into your eyes is going to downregulate your melatonin. Melatonin is a hormone, but it's the hormone that helps you sleep. And then sleep in a quiet, cool, and dark environment. So that is the sleep hygiene according to the National Sleep Foundation, which is similar to what I had mentioned a couple weeks ago. And then lastly, vitamins, minerals, supplements, botanicals. If you are low in something, then supplement with it. So vitamin D. Find out what your vitamin D levels are before you start supplementing vitamin D. Chances are most people are low in vitamin D. Most people are low in omega-3s. Most people are low in magnesium, vitamin C, vitamin E, all your vitamin Bs. So most people are low in their vitamins because it's not necessarily in their food that they're eating. Foods are depleted and then we don't eat enough of it anyways. So supplement. The important things for specific to diabetes, just get a good quality multivitamin and a multimineral. If you don't know what vitamins and minerals to take and you don't want to take a bunch of pills, then just get a good high potency, good quality vitamin and mineral. If you buy it at a box store or in just your grocery store, that's not going to be a good quality. Typically that vitamin and mineral is just going to pass through your body. You're barely going to be able to absorb it. You're really literally pooping out your money. I mentioned vitamin D, omega-3s that have a good ratio of EPA to DHA, magnesium. If you're taking good multivitamin or mineral, make sure it has maybe L-carnitine, vitamin K2, vitamin C, vitamin E. Those are all your antioxidants. And then maybe a little bit of niacin. So those are some supplements that you can think about. Again, if you just take a good quality vitamin and mineral, that might be sufficient. And then some botanicals that are known to help with diabetes is Panax ginseng, fenugreek extract, berberine, mulberry extract, garlic. Those are, for the most part, those are all good for diabetes and don't have side effects. So if you have teas that have that or supplements that have that would help for diabetes as well. Thank you for sitting with me through this doom and gloom episode. Next week will be a lighter subject. But I do want you to think about all this because I want to reiterate that type 2 diabetes is absolutely reversible. I'm going to leave you with one last verse, and it's from 3 John 1:2, and it says, "Dear friend, I pray that you may enjoy good health and that all may go well with you, even as your soul is getting on well." I will see you guys next week.
Thank you for listening to Healthy California. I hope you learned something today. Treatment and health care should be proactive and preventative, so getting to the root cause of a disease or illness is so important. The U.S. has a good trauma medicine design, which means you see a doctor when there is already a problem. Let's beat disease before it happens. This podcast represents my opinions based on my research and education and is not intended to be used for medical diagnosis or treatment. It is not a substitute for your doctor or any healthcare provider. I provide education only. If you are looking for more answers or have questions, you can find my contact information in the show notes, or find a functional nutritionist or functional medicine practitioner to add to your healthcare team. In order for me to continue providing this free information, I depend on you to follow, subscribe, like, tell your family and friends about this podcast. Make sure you set your notifications to let you know when a new podcast is published. In addition, I can't do anything without my sponsors who I have personally vetted and highly recommend. I would never have a sponsor that I don't agree with or wouldn't use personally. I want you to gather as much information as possible in order to take back your health. You can do it, and I want to help you get there.